Kamala Harris lost the US elections in 2024 in the exact same way as Hillary Clinton did in 2016. First, she led big for several months and then her ratings went downhill. Can this be coincidence? Of course not. The reason for both their defeats is a physiological hormone switch in the brains of the swing voters in the swing states. Don't worry, this doesn't have anything to do with Elon Musk's Neuralink. The real culprit is not big tech, but big candy. And the switch gets triggered by the clock change on the weekend before the elections. Still, this video is worth over $1 billion and it will set a new world record for getting the most US American women excited in the history of the YouTube. We are going to explore possibilities how we can get rid of this unfairness towards women. But what is this hormone switch? Is it a switch between Democrat blue and Republican red? No, it rather is a switch between female pink and the dark male tones. We open up this study here from the University of Durham in the swing state North Carolina from the year 2011. This study is available online. I will give you the link in the description. This here is not a Kamala Harris poll. No, this is the seasonal testosterone of a non-contraceptive woman in North Carolina. And now let's take a look at an actual Kamala Harris poll rating in the last 3 months before the election. And now let's have another look at the poll ratings of Hillary Clinton from 2016 in her last 3 months before the elections. We see that there is a little dent around the time of 9/11. That's because Hillary fainted at a 9/11 memorial and voters were not so happy about it. And now most of you will say, get out of here. Is it really that simple? That is why Kamala lost? That is why Hillary lost? Yes, this is why they lost. Isn't it fascinating that there is a study that lets us look directly into the minds of the swing voters at the time of the US elections? Let's take a deeper look into this study. We can find 3 different hormone graphs, one for the man, one for the women, and one for the hormonally contraceptive women. These are women who take contraceptives like the birth control pill. So we see the testosterone level of both men and women, but how do we interpret this testosterone level? Well, first of all, we have to differentiate between men and women. For the men, it is all about having a stable but high testosterone level. This symbolizes a successful dominant man. Note here that it is very bad if the testosterone peaks like in December or if the testosterone is very unstable. So if it goes up, down, which is what we can observe in July, August, September, October. And this is the exact period before the elections. Make no mistake, if it's 2 men that are running for US president, then the first week of November seems to be the perfect time to determine the go-to guy, the dominant man that should lead the country for the next 4 years. Still, when the presidential race is between a man and a woman, then things are very different. Testosterone as a hormone blocks pain signals. This is very important for the women because it makes them appear tough. So how do the non-contraceptive women in the swing state North Carolina perceive Kamala Harris? From July on, the testosterone steadily rises until it peaks in October. And then, just 2 weeks before the election, it plummets. And the polls perfectly reflect this testosterone level in the non-contraceptive voters of the swing state. Kamala's poll ratings went up in the time of the Kamala mania in late July, August, September, and mid-October. And then her poll ratings magically dropped, just like Hillary's poll ratings in 2016. Of course, we can now better explain why Kamala Harris walked very confidently into the TV debate against Donald Trump in mid-September. We can also understand why Donald Trump gave a very mild victory speech in early November.
It's time to unite.
But it's not important what the seasonal hormones of the candidates are. The only thing that matters is what the seasonal hormones of the voters are. It's crucial what the voters project into the candidates. Now let's look at the contraceptive women. These are women that take contraceptives like the birth control pill. Now, first of all, their testosterone is way lower. It's only 60% of the non-contraceptive women, and their graph is also completely different from the non-contraceptive woman. It's actually more similar to the male graph. In late September into October, or we can say until December, the testosterone steadily rises. Here is where the contraceptive women get really irritated and they start losing their sympathies for Kamala Harris, and they simply don't elect the non-contraceptive female candidate, Kamala Harris.
I voted for him because
But North Carolina was just one big swing state. The other big swing state was Pennsylvania. The two states are just 400 kilometers or 250 miles apart from each other. The biggest city of Pennsylvania is Philadelphia, and it is located on the Atlantic Ocean, just like North Carolina. The bigger part of Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania, is located behind the mountain ridge of the Appalachians. The poll ratings of North Carolina and Pennsylvania are very similar, and it is thus very likely that the populations of these two states have very similar hormone levels. And I go even one step further. I say all the states in the northeastern part of the USA have similar hormone levels. We can find the characteristic curve even as far west as Nevada. Arizona, on the other hand, doesn't seem to feature these typical properties. On the East Coast, we can also find exceptions. Climate, ethnicity, and political events with a strong local relevance seem to be the dominant factors to explain the occurrence of this typical curve. Why didn't the voters simply ignore their hormones? Why didn't the voters simply go with their convictions when they voted on election day? Well, pretty simple. Because of the clock change that happens on the first weekend of November. This makes everything appear a lot darker at the exact same time of day. This is a huge burden for our pineal gland that regulates the sleeping cycle. It affects the entire hormone system, including our pituitary gland, which is the biggest hormone gland of our brain. The election results largely confirm this. Donald Trump scored 77.2 million votes. This is 3 million votes more than he had in 2020. Kamala Harris scored 74.8 million votes. This is a staggering 8.5 million votes less than Joe Biden in 2020. Let's assume that 3 million votes transitioned directly over to Donald Trump. This leaves an impressive 5.5 million potential votes that could have supported Kamala Harris. Bear in mind that Kamala would have needed only a little bit over 2.4 million votes to beat Donald Trump in the popular vote. This leaves another 3.1 million votes that could have given Kamala Harris a landslide victory in the popular vote. Let's also look at the electoral vote. To win the three major swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Kamala would have needed only a little bit over 240,000 votes. This is 0.15% of the 155 million votes in the USA total. What was the problem? Many voters simply didn't go to vote because they couldn't vote against their hormone system. Their seasonal hormones suggested Donald Trump as the go-to guy, the dominant, strong, stable,
I'm a very stable genius,
male candidate that they should vote for. Apparently they couldn't bring themselves to vote for the woman Kamala Harris because their hormone system told them that Kamala was on the decline. On this channel we also had a poll on the Sulzer video and it ended 1-0 for Donald Trump. And I don't blame you guys, I was the same. In the 2 weeks before the elections, I didn't want to research Kamala Harris. I skipped forward every time I saw her in documentaries, and I preferred watching Donald Trump dance to YMCA. How about the old saying, where there's a will, there's a way? Well, apparently not in the USA on election day. How can we now fix this bug that is so unfair towards female candidates? We can fix it two ways. We can change either the date of the election or the date of the clock change. The date of the clock change is fixed in the latest amendment of the Uniform Time Act from the year 2005. Until the year 2005, the clock change happened on the last weekend in October. Then the lobby of the candy industry wanted to maximize their profits on Halloween. That's the reason why I'm standing in front of these beehives here. That's the closest thing that I could find to the candy industry here in this natural reserve. But that was just one possibility. We can also change the election date. There have been attempts to postpone the election date to the Veterans Day on November 11. Overall, it's all about getting a bigger distance between the time of the clock change and election days. So we can either prepone the clock change date or postpone the election date. Is it that easy? Well, let's remember the hormone graphs again. If we postpone the election date to Veterans Day on November 11, then the men still have an unfair advantage over the women. If we prepone the election date to, let's say, mid-October, then the women have an unfair advantage over the men. What's the solution? I say let's move the election day to the 4th of July. Let's move it to Independence Day or to the weekend before Independence Day. That's the time of the year when all three groups, that means the men, the non-contraceptive women, and the contraceptive women, have a stable testosterone level, and they all have the same chance of becoming US president. No group has an unfair advantage over the other group. And now we're almost at the end of this video, and we're going to deal with the question that all German and British viewers have. How about the election victories of Maggie Thatcher and Angela Merkel? Yes, I am pretty convinced that Maggie Thatcher won her elections starting in 1979 because the elections were held in May and early June. The reasoning for this is a bit different. It is actually a very low testosterone level of both the men and the non-contraceptive women, and low testosterone in women, that low, means a very high estrogen level of the non-contraceptive women. This means that Margaret Thatcher was elected because the male voters and the female voters saw a very attractive woman with very high estrogen in Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. Yes, people, get this straight. The British voters voted Margaret Thatcher because they thought she was sexy. Margaret Thatcher won 3 elections in a row. And how about Angela Merkel? Yeah, Angela Merkel won even 4 times in a row. How can we explain this? Yeah, the elections were all held in September. She benefited from the female month September, where the men and the non-contraceptive women and the contraceptive women all support the female candidate. And as a fun side fact, I can even confirm the typical hormone graph with the rising testosterone at the end of September and the stable plateau into October for the region of Munich, Bavaria, where I live. And this is the reason why we celebrate Oktoberfest. And now please watch the outro. Guys, I know this is a bit unusual, but I put the most soul and passion and effort into these outros, and I would love if you share my sense of humor. The punchline is at the very end. So have fun, enjoy.
And as hard as it might be to imagine, your daughter will grow up and become the President of the United States.